Good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome.
Good morning.
So glad you're all here. We'll give folks about another minute to sign on. We're so glad you're here. Hi, Rita. It's so nice to see you.
Good to see you too.
Good morning, Taylor. It's nice to see you.
Good morning. Nice to see you again.
And we're going to get started in about half a minute. And Mason, if you can continue to let folks in, I'll pass that job on over to you. Okay. Here we go. Well, good morning, everyone. On behalf of the WVU Center for Community Engagement, we are so glad you're joining us for this Academic Community Engagement, or ACE, event. The ACE Development Series aims to increase the breadth and quality of academic community engagement at WVU. Our intentions are that through presentation and discussion, attendees like yourself of the ACE series will learn how to get started or enhance what you're already doing and connect to a network of peers and resources. Today's presentation is called Introduction to University Community Matchmaking. My name is Melissa Calabrese, and I am the Academic Community Engagement Coordinator with the Center for Community Engagement. I'm here with other members of the Center for Community Engagement, including Mason Arbogast, the Civic and Volunteer Coordinator. Mason, if you want to wave. And of course, Whitney is with the Center for Community Engagement. I will introduce her in a moment. Are there any other CCE folks on? If you want to turn on your screen and wave. I don't think there are. But, yeah, okay, we are all so glad you're here. We're here together for the next 50 minutes to share some best practices and ask questions about how we might be able to nurture inclusive and holistic ways of thinking, learning, and collaborating. I encourage you to engage in whatever way feels right to you, including using the chat and making use of the Zoom emojis. I always say how much I love my little heart emoji. And you could also just directly ask questions. This is meant to be a conversation. So here we are. The Center for Community Engagement's very own Whitney Glotfelty is our panelist today. Whitney wears many hats. She is the Community Outreach Coordinator as well as the Assistant Director here of Community and Engagement Partnerships. She provides support and resources to hundreds of organizations, including nonprofits, governmental agencies, small businesses, and faith-based establishments. Through facilitating the Community Partner Program, Whitney assists community leaders in connecting with WVU and each other, allowing for impactful reciprocal relationships. As a former educator and nonprofit leader, Whitney is passionate about finding ways to bring her loves of teaching and community together to meet the unique needs of our area and time. She is deeply inspired by those she gets to connect with through her role, including both by enthusiastic students who engage in meaningful service and by community leaders and influencers who work tirelessly to fulfill important needs. Whitney holds a master's in business administration with a focus on management and motivation, as well as a bachelor's in elementary education with a specialization in mathematics from Frostburg State University. Her professional experiences have included teaching middle school mathematics to all levels of learners, serving as the residential director of a group home for children placed through the Departments of Social and Juvenile Services, and working with small businesses to facilitate their success through financial assistance. Whitney feels that this robust set of experiences and interests allows her to maintain perspective and truly understand the need for mutually beneficial and respectful relationships. Whitney, thank you so much for joining our conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure. I'm really excited to be here and to see many familiar faces and some that I am not as familiar with. So really excited to be here.
Wonderful, thank you. And just so all of our guests know, we are recording this and we will share out the recording to everyone who's registered, as well as any resources that are shared. We'll make sure that's in the email as well. Okay, so we shall begin. Whitney, for the purpose of this conversation, would you please first, let's define community so we can frame our conversation.
Absolutely. That's always a great question, and one that I love to start with. Here at the Center for Community Engagement, we really look at community not just as defined by geographical barriers, but really more so focused on common sort of interests and missions. So while much of our work is focused here in Morgantown and certainly across the state of West Virginia as we look to fulfill our land grant mission, we do have partners that we certainly work with that are outside of those barriers, or maybe even encompass multiple states or are regionally focused. And that simply, again, is just because of those sort of joint efforts and shared perspectives and interests and passion areas. And so we don't ever want to, rule out a partnership simply because of geography. So that's generally how I would define community, is a set of individuals who are all working towards a common goal.
Thank you. And we do so much here at the CCE, at the Center for Community Engagement, in its role in connecting the university with communities throughout West Virginia and beyond. Can you just give a brief overview of your role with what we all do here at the CCE?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Center for Community Engagement in general really exists to support these effective partnerships between our campus and our community. And we do that through many different ways, but primarily the three things that we typically think about are through engaged teaching, scholarship, and action. In my role as being the community partner coordinator, I really get to help with a large piece of what we do, which is making sure that those partnerships are mutually beneficial and reciprocal in nature. And so I often times think of myself as being an advocate or a voice for our community. I have the pleasure, as you mentioned earlier, of working with many leaders in our community who are doing really, really great things. And so I get to learn about all of those sort of things that they're working on, projects, and even areas of need that they have, and then come back to my colleagues at the center, including you, Melissa, and collaborate to figure out how we can best support those efforts through the resources that we do have here at the university.
Thank you. And so what are some of the forms of partnerships that are established through our CCE and with partners?
Yeah, so there are so many ways that we partner. It's going to be hard to encompass them all, but I definitely will do my best to try. So one thing that I will mention is that we really want to make sure that we are responding as organically as possible to the community's needs and aspirations. And so at the very base level, the Center for Community Engagement really tries to engage our campus community in responding to those needs through general volunteerism. It's something that has been alive at the Center for Community Engagement for a very long time, and certainly something that we find a lot of benefit through for individuals, students, faculty, or staff that want to get involved. So one way that we do that, and probably one of our most commonly used tools, is through a platform called iServe, which is our volunteer recruitment and management platform. And Mason Arbogast, who's here with us today, is really vital in ensuring that that platform maintains its functionality and is constantly up to date. But I mention that specifically because through that platform, agencies can go on, they can create a profile, and then they can post what their volunteer needs are. And so again, that really allows our campus community to respond to what our community partners are actually asking for, and what their needs are. So again, that general volunteer service is still critical to the work that we do. kind of expounding on that, we also work with many groups at the university. So we support days of service for lots of different folks, whether it be this summer, we had a group of staff, an entire department that wanted to get together and give back to the community. We've worked with athletic teams and have an upcoming event that is related to that. And then many student groups, Greek organizations, and other things. So not only do they utilize tools like iServe, but we also provide a level of support for them in finding volunteer opportunities that really fit what they're looking for in order to give back to. And again, making sure that that's also something that the community can benefit from. And then digging a little bit deeper, even in those partnerships, we also then support those partnerships as they relate to academics and research. And so we support all of the service learning courses at WVU in many ways, but one way is in helping to establish those partnerships with our community. So any service learning instructor can come to us and really we sit down and through a holistic sort of approach, we talk about what the learning outcomes are of the class, what the goals are, and then from there we can help to make some recommendations for what some really solid partnerships might look like. To be able to move those forward. And then similarly, we provide that same support to faculty who may be interested in engaging our community through research efforts as well. So again, really holistic. We want to make sure that this is a really individualized approach. So we talk directly with the faculty and researchers, and just, from there, we get an idea of what their aspirations are and then can help support them in that way.
Thank you for that overview. So much of what we do, what we all do on this call is we try to nurture our relationships. And that takes practice, and as we work with students, especially, we're learning, right? And so I'm wondering if you can share some successful examples of partnerships between the campus and the WVU community, all of our partners, and how those successful relationships and partnerships led to a significant impact.
Yeah, absolutely. This is probably one of my favorite questions. It's also one of the hardest, I think, for me, because there's just so many ways that I think that we've been able to connect with the community and really provide some impact here in West Virginia. But one of the things that I'll mention before I provide some specific examples is I think when I think about the level of impact and our success in doing this, I oftentimes want to think about sort of the expansive ways in which we have been able to engage in the community. I think it's really easy for us sometimes to think about our direct service, and certainly there are many partners that we work with who need support in direct service areas. So, whether students are engaging directly by helping with interacting with children or childcare in some way, or they're handing out meals at a pantry or something of that nature. So those are, I think, a lot of times for our students who are coming in from just out of high school, I think that that's the type of service that they are more accustomed to, is this kind of direct service area. And again, I don't want to downplay that in any way, but I also want to highlight that when I think about our success, I think that it's because of both our direct work with our community partners, but then also all of the really wonderful indirect ways that our students are able to help our community partners. And so that takes on many forms, but we've had students just in the last 2 years alone, I can say we've had students who have been engaged in grant research and grant writing for our community partners, who have helped with event planning and logistical support, who have done work on marketing and communications. They've provided translation and language services in some cases to our community partners for various things. Advocacy and awareness campaigns are huge. data analysis, strategic planning, and much, much more. So I just want to highlight that there are lots of ways that we engage students. And so some of those, involve that direct capacity, and some of those are more indirect. But I do want to get back to providing at least one example and I'm really excited to see Margaret on the call today with Human Animal Bond, who's one of our great community partners. But I specifically want to sort of bring up this example because I think that it's a great way to sort of see how multiple groups of students are able to get involved with an organization and support it in various different ways. So last semester, we actually had a group of students from our MDS 489 Multidisciplinary Studies capstone who worked with Human Animal Bond, and they were actually able to create a garden, but thinking about what plants are native here to West Virginia. So those students were able to get involved in the process and do some research related to those plants. They were able to actually help to build out the garden itself, and then provide some information for folks who may wish to travel out and check it out at Ridgeway Farm that Human Animal Bond operates. And so I think the students really got a lot out of that experience. There was a really sort of robust opportunity for them to leave a lasting impact. I think that that's one of the things I love, is that I can drive out there today and I can see their work. And so for our students, that's really nice to feel like they've been able to leave something behind that is going to last far beyond them. But then also we have linked this semester students with Human Animal Bond. In fact, they're working with many of our students from various different areas across the university. But just last month, they were able to release their first ever community-facing newsletter, and our students were able to be involved in that. And so I use this example, and I could give many others, but one thing that I love about it is that it wasn't just a one-stop shop of, a one-time partnership, but really being able to grow those partnerships and then being able to see how it may not just be one class or one particular group of students that we connect with their work, but we can connect in multiple different ways to achieve a lot of different goals and move things forward.
And Margaret Kitt, it has her screen on right now, who's with Human Animal Bond. Hi, Margaret.
Yes.
I think part of the success of what you were just highlighting, Whitney, is because of wonderful partners like Margaret who understand that they're co-teachers in many ways. And so, Margaret, I will invite you at any point. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you would like to, at any point, want to add to anything, we welcome you to do so. Yeah. Okay.
If you don't mind, I will say that it has been a great experience for us. And you mentioned the newsletter, Whitney. We would not have done that newsletter if it hadn't been for the student that was helping us. And so, they really contribute a lot and have contributed a lot to us. I particularly keyed in on what you said about sort of the differences in direct and indirect service. And I think one thing that I've realized, because there is such a divergence of what the freshmen are able to do versus the junior and seniors. And I think it's really important to keep that in mind. I think your expectations have to be adapted to what their experiences are and where they are in their schooling and their growth. So I think that was a real important lesson for us to learn. So I appreciated you adding that. So.
Absolutely. Thanks, Margaret. And thanks so much for being here and all that you do.
Thank you as well. So Whitney, can you please share with us how the community needs and aspirations are identified and prioritized in this matchmaking process? Is there a specific criteria or any other ways of selecting students and faculty with the community projects?
Yeah, that's a great question. So through our community partner program, we are in really close contact with our community partners on a very regular basis. We have opportunities for our partners to connect and share with us at least once a month, but oftentimes much more often. And thankfully, many of them do take advantage of those opportunities. So that's one way. I think just being in constant communication and being accessible is one way that we try to stay aware of what their needs are on a more consistent and constant basis, rather than sort of waiting for the beginning of the semester to roll around and then, sort of trying to get things all lined up really quickly or anything like that. But our team also prioritizes one-on-one consultations. We love to do site visits. I, in particular, really love being able to go out and meet our community partners on their home turf, so to speak. I think it gives me a really strong sense, a stronger sense than what I could get in a phone call or reading, their website online about what their mission is, what their vision is, and even some of the challenges that they face. And because I have the luxury of being in this role now for almost 2 years, I can oftentimes even sometimes identify needs that they may not really even know that they can ask for. Sometimes that's something that I hear from our partners is, oh, I didn't know that I could ask for some of these indirect things like grant research. I didn't know that was an option. And so I'm able to kind of, once I learn more about them and dig a little bit deeper and start to really develop those relationships, I can make some recommendations to them as well, or provide some suggestions or even other examples from partners. And I think that that's also one of the really big values of our coffee chats that we have with our community partners too, is they get to hear what other partners are working on with students. And so oftentimes we leave that with another partner reaching out later and saying, hey, I heard that, there was a group of students who was doing this work for this partner. Is that something that we could tap into in the future? And so we love being able to do that. So I really think that, having that information and having that relationship is what allows us to be able to make an impact. And again, I know I've used this word multiple times, but it's really through a holistic sort of model that we work to do that. So I would say that we're not super criteria focused as far as being able to find a partnership, but we really try to think about the desired outcomes and making sure that we're including, the perspectives of both our campus and our community partners.
Thanks. I know there are some instructors on this call, some professors, administrators. Some have been here for a long time, but some are also new, and they're trying to get a sense of who our partnerships are. Would they be allowed to attend the coffee chats, or how would they find out more about partners if they're just trying to first get a layout of the land, understand who's at the table? So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm always more than happy to have folks at those coffee chats. I think it's really valuable to have multiple voices there. So we would be more than happy to have folks attend that. We do have a community partner newsletter that goes out at least once a month, oftentimes much more often. And through that, that's where our faculty, community partners, anybody who is interested can really learn a lot more about when those coffee chats happen. And then typically each of the coffee chats, we sort of have a theme that we also talk about in addition to sharing sort of what's new with your organization. And so if there's a particular theme that maybe someone is interested in, we would invite them to be involved in that conversation. After this, I will certainly send out some additional resources. So I'll make sure that everyone gets an opportunity, if you're not already on that newsletter, to sign up for that. Again, we want to make sure that you're connected in many ways. But I would also mention, if someone is just sort of looking to see who our community partners are and find out a little bit more about them, in addition to utilizing iServe, which is one really great way that they can do that, we also have a list of our community partners on our website. which is communityengagement.wvu.edu. And you can go there and figure out who our partners are. And Mason has been really critical in helping to make sure that that information is updated, but it's really wonderful because it actually provides you links to their iServe pages and their websites. So if there's an area of particular interest that you want to dive into, you can certainly do that.
And on the flip side, I know we have partners on this call today as well. We also have an academic community engagement newsletter that if folks would like to know what's happening with our faculty, staff, researchers, that's another opportunity that we'll share out as well, just so everyone has the same information. There's so much we could talk about today, Whitney.
I know it.
Yeah, so you've talked already a lot about that intentional support. Relationships can be tricky, right? And so could we talk a little bit about some of the challenges or obstacles that maybe you've encountered in the past 2 years with some of this university community matchmaking, and how have you and or partners and or faculty addressed them, and how have we learned from that process?
Yeah. So I think that probably the biggest challenge, which I already mentioned and alluded to, is that it is so individualized. This work is not a one-size-fits-all model. What works for one particular partner or even one particular, say, service learning course, for example, doesn't work for other partners or other courses. And so we really have to take the time to develop those relationships and dig deep into what folks are looking for, what their needs are, in order to be able to kind of fit that all together. And so I think that that's one of the challenges, but it's also one of the things that I actually really love about this job, is that it's not something that we can just build one system or model and then put out and say, okay, everyone, this is the way it goes. But rather, it's really a set of systems, and constantly refining those systems and those relationships and finding new processes that work in order to meet those needs. So I think that would probably be the biggest one that I would mention. But as far as overcoming it, I would just say, thankfully, we have a team of folks here at the Center for Community Engagement with various different areas of expertise and focus. And so that allows us to be able to really respond to those unique needs. Another thing that I would mention, is resources. We know that resources, and that it takes a lot of different forms, but resources can certainly be limited. Whether that be funding, time certainly is a great resource that I think most of us don't feel like we have enough of. And staffing for our community partners can all contribute to making, for some challenges when it comes to these sort of partnerships. And then transportation is really a huge one. We know that many of our students don't have access to their personal transportation here on campus. And we live in an area where public transportation is somewhat limited. And so really, as far as ways that we've worked to mitigate that, it's not perfect. I will be the first one to admit that. We are constantly looking at bigger picture ways that we can address some of those resource limitations. But in particular, I think it's just a matter of being as creative as we possibly can. Thinking about, for example, as we mentioned earlier, the indirect ways that students perhaps can work with an organization and be able to support their mission without being there. Thankfully, we live in a world, right, where we can do things like this, and we can have conversations and get to know each other without being face to face. And so while it's not always, the most ideal model, or it's not something that we choose for every group or every class or every partner, it is an option that we have. And so we try and be creative with that. and really just try to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help support that in a way that, provides the most impact to our community.
I know our office has helped with providing bus maps and trying to help map out times. I mean, we do our best, and we also share that information with faculty and instructors as well. If anyone would like to unmute themselves, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but if you would like to ask additional questions about some of those challenges, this is meant to be a discussion, so we do invite you to do that as well. But meanwhile, Whitney, what are some things through this matchmaking process that you do or our center does that tries to make it inclusive and considers the diverse needs of our community?
Yeah, so this is really one of my favorite things because I think West Virginia is such a unique state. And we're even within West Virginia, located at the main campus in Morgantown. I think that oftentimes we are not always reflective even of the entire state of West Virginia. And so I love the fact that while we're in rural Appalachia, we have students from truly all over the world who are here and who want to get engaged with our community. So for our community partners, and faculty, we really strive to make sure that there is a commitment to understanding and a sensitivity to those sort of cultural sort of competence related issues. And for our partners, that's even outlined in their MOU, their memorandum of understanding that they sign in order to be a community partner with us, is really a dedication to an affirmation of their dedication to be continually learning and open to that diversity. And so we're always willing to provide additional support in those ways to our community partners as well. But I do want to note that, it is something that we start those conversations early, really from the very first time that they become partners, about what that means and looks like. And then certainly for our faculty as well, we provide many resources. And Melissa, not to shine, throw the spotlight back on you, but you provide a lot of resources to our faculty related to these issues as well. And obviously with that, really our goal is that, that information sifts down to our students, from our faculty to our students. And so we know that many of our faculty are really helping students prepare for that before they step out into the community. But things do sometimes arise. Thankfully, we have a wonderful group of faculty, of students, and of community partners that we really I haven't had a ton of issues related to this, but there have been questions before that come up. And so we're always here to continually help support and provide some individualized support if there's ever a question or an issue that arises for really anyone that's involved in our work. Margaret, I see you have a question or a comment.
It's a question. So I'm just curious, with all that's going on at the university with the transformation, how, if at all, that's affected you this semester and maybe going into next semester, and if we should anticipate, maybe less students being available because, faculty are in transition or whatever. I was just wondering if it's affected you much.
That's a great question. And Melissa and my other CCE folks, feel free to chime in. But I would say, generally speaking, I'm going to feel pretty confident in saying that we still have a lot of students who and faculty who are going to be engaged. I think that we certainly want to acknowledge the fact that there are some faculty that it's been very much a struggle for them as they're thinking about service learning and engaging in partnerships because of the uncertainty that lies there, and not wanting to, they want to be respectful of our community partners. And so if they're feeling like maybe they're they're not sure about the future of their position or their department. They really, I think, are a little bit more hesitant to engage with our community partners, just simply, again, out of respect for the partner. They don't want to line up a bunch of partnerships and then ultimately not be able to fulfill their commitment. But I also, on the flip side of that, Margaret, I would say that everything that we've heard and continues to be voiced about the transformation really comes back to sort of coming back to our roots of our land grant mission. And so when I think about that, then I can see that I think that there will be an even greater emphasis on those who are here and are doing the work to engage in our community. So right now, I can't say for sure. And Melissa, you might have a stronger perspective on sort of levels of whether or not there's more or less. But I feel like it's shifting a little bit. And I think as we come out of that, I hope that there will be an even deeper appreciation of the work that it really is being done by everyone in these partnerships.
I could add something to that.
Yes, please.
Sorry, I'm on my phone because my computer isn't all hooked up yet. My name's Margaret Stout, and we had just started a 2-year, 18-month community partnership this semester. And because we couldn't fulfill what was promised to the community, because the teach out plan did not include the final course in the series of 3 required courses, we had to cancel our project with them, and it was very, very sad. But I also would like to say that in looking at the folks that have been left, which include me, many of my long time over the last 14 plus years partners in collaborations with host communities are included on that list. So, I think the work that you all do going forward is going to become even more crucial than it's been in the past, because there's a whole new generation or set or whatever you want to call it, a new cohort of faculty that are going to need to get up to speed in doing deep community partnerships. So I'm really glad that you guys are there, because there is a significant loss of engaged faculty.
Margaret, we sure appreciate you saying that. Thank you. And you've always been a critical part and piece to supporting our state. So thank you. And I would just like to say that I'm seeing the same thing that Margaret said. I think the spring will be a little uncertain. We have some new faculty who are excited about service learning, but will need some guidance on how to do that. And so there will be that learning curve and a resettling. So I think the spring might be a little bumpy in some ways, but exciting because there's folks who are enthusiastic, but it'll take some time to rebuild that momentum. Margaret, I'm really glad you're still part of this crew and that we'll have a chance to continue to build. Yeah. But does anyone else have any other questions or comments? Rita?
I do. I'm from the College of Media and I'm currently on research sabbatical right now. Yay. But I'm coming back in the spring, and I've been here since 2008, and I did service learning through UNC Chapel Hill when I was a PhD student there with my writing class. As soon as I came here, I worked with Christy and her team at the time. And I've always worked with the center. There was a break in there though, because I started getting larger grants and working with communities away from Morgantown. So they had longer term projects and different objectives and outcomes and requirements needed. So I'm wanting to get back into working with the center. I don't have a larger grant right now, and I haven't done that for a while. And the main class I did this was my PR, right, public relations writing and applications class. And that's a 300 level course. I'm used to teaching the capstone, so I expect a lot. So I need to bring it down a notch because I want to give the students depth. The class was taught online from, it started in 2020 to probably 2022 when I was starting to bring it back on ground. And I saw, when I brought it back on ground, I saw that the students, I don't know, the choice to remove partners from that class overall, I know some people still use it, but the choice to remove partners from that class was more like, here, let's focus on the writing rather than client relations. But since I came back to the class, I hadn't taught the class since 2011. I saw what was missing was the students, like the level of passion that they have for their work rather than just turning in an assignment. They feel more responsible to someone else. And I feel like the way to get students more involved in learning and on campus is to do something that matters. I need to bring that back to the class. I realize it's more work, but it's more fulfilling. And it will require me to cut some things out of the class, but I want to do that this semester. But it's important that I find the right partners for that. I'm also considering it for a research class as well. And I really need to just meet with someone, I think. I've looked at the iServe page. I can't get the iServe links to work for a couple of the community partners, but I really feel like it would be beneficial for me to have a conversation with someone to really find the right fit to kind of bring this model back on the ground for like what we need for the students and how we can contribute best to partners who need this type of work. So is that possible for me to do that, to kind of reestablish this relationship with certain classes and maybe introduce it to a new class?
I'll chime in and say, absolutely, Rita, I'm already excited about this and really thrilled that you brought that up and that you're looking forward to re-engaging in that way. I would be happy to have that conversation with you. You can reach out to me individually, or I will definitely make a note to reach out to you as well. But I do think that I want to bring up one of the points that you mentioned, which is, of course, we encourage you to utilize the resources, but certainly understand that there are limitations to that. And we have hundreds of partners. And so we don't expect you to, have to click on every link and learn about everyone and be able to come away from that saying, okay, now I know, here's my list of 5 that, I know could utilize this. I do think that that's where really our sweet spot is. Just because, like I said, we are in constant communication with them. So I think through a conversation between you and I, we can talk a little bit more about what that's looked like before and what you envision for the future. And then from there, I definitely know that we'll have some really interested partners. I have a couple thoughts just immediately off the top of my head that are coming to me, but I'm sure there are many more who would love that. But I'm happy to kind of help narrow down that list and then, go from there.
Okay, great. Are you familiar with that class, the public relations writing and applications class?
I'm not as familiar with that particular class, though I know we've worked with other classes in the College of Media, Dr. Ops class,
Yes.
for example, and helping with partnerships there. But certainly happy, and Christy obviously still plays a huge role. So I'm happy to chat with her too, to get some historical information as well.
And just for
Right.
any faculty that's on this call, we typically do like to see the syllabus and the learning outcomes of the class, because we do try to match the learning outcomes with the partners' needs as well. So heads up to anybody who's on this call, that does help guide us through these connections too. Yeah.
Whitney, I will reach out to you and we'll set something up because I will share the syllabus with you when we meet so I can kind of explain all that. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Rita.
Wonderful. We only have a little bit of time left, but I do want to highlight, are there measures in place, Whitney, for assessing the impact and effectiveness of all these partnerships? Yeah,
absolutely. So once again, I'm going to say that that model looks a little bit differently, depending on what particular sort of assessment or level of impact we're looking to assess, whether it's a service learning course versus general volunteerism versus research. But I can share a couple of the things that we do for our service learning courses. We oftentimes do mid-semester checks. That really goes out to everyone involved. So we connect with our community partners to see how things are going at the same time as we're asking students how things are going, and also faculty how things are going, and sort of coming back and making sure that everyone is on track. And mitigating any issues, hopefully at that mid-semester mark, if there are any that haven't been brought to our attention before that. And then excuse me, we offer lots of resources for sort of end of semester or end of project evaluations as well. We have some that are sort of some standard models that we oftentimes use with our community partners, that we are happy to share with faculty, but we're also more than happy to, utilize any sort of assessment that the faculty potentially have either crafted, or maybe they want to take our sort of standard models and, add or elaborate on those in certain ways. And so we will definitely work with faculty in order to be able to get that information. And similarly, we try to get information from our faculty and our students to pass back to our community partners. It's a constant, that lifelong learning that we all are doing. It never ends. And we know that there's always ways that we can continue to refine our work. So we try and do it that way as well. And then more generally, I would just say there are lots of ways that we connect and get some feedback, both informally and formally, from our different stakeholders, whether it be through organic conversation or stakeholder surveys, things of that nature, that we try to get a sort of a bigger picture of our work and its effectiveness and impact, and where we can go from there.
Well, thank you for all that you've shared, Whitney. I know this is just the start of the conversation. This is the introduction. If anyone has additional questions, we will remain on this call for a little bit longer, but we do want to honor everyone's time. And so thank you everyone for showing up to our ASEC session. We have another one next week on the 14th, which we'll send out in our follow-up email. We would love to have you there as well. So thanks everyone for being here today. And if you have additional questions, we'll hold on for you, and have a wonderful week.
Thanks so much for having me, and thanks everyone for being here.